Now, when I say the word ritual, what comes to mind for you? Perhaps it's something to do with candles and chanting in an unfamiliar language in a dark room shrouded with mystery. Or maybe some sort of ancient practice meant to appease the gods. Or maybe it's something much closer to home, maybe your own daily practice of unwinding after a long day, sitting up with your feet up in your favorite chair with a cup of tea. This term ritual gets used in so many different ways. Sasha Sagan, who is the author of this recent book, For Small Creatures Such as We, Rituals for Finding Meaning in Our Unlikely World, offers that rituals honor the joy and significance of the human experience, and they bring us together. They mark important transitions. And rituals don't necessarily need to be connected to spirituality or to faith. Sagan herself grew up in a highly scientific home. You may know her father, the astronomer Carl Sagan, and she herself does not practice a particular faith. But yet she says even though her home was so oriented towards science, there was a lot of appreciation of the beauty of the world and the awesomeness of things that others might see simply as facts. And all this has led her to really be appreciative of and curious about ritual. I think that Sagan's book can help us, those of us who do have faith traditions, perhaps see more clearly the meaning and the power in rituals, that, especially those that we might just take for granted or barely notice that we're doing. And Sagan inspires her readers, us, to create our own ritual practices to honor this deeply human need to mark the important moments and, in fact, make those moments more real to us by doing special things. Celebration is, in fact, one of the things that is unique to being human. Even though other species experience happiness and even joy, they do not go to nearly the same extremes as us to host elaborate parties, prepare extravagant feasts with decorations and gifts and special outfits. Celebration really takes a lot of time and effort when you think about it, and can even involve sacrifices of time and money. While we might have good criticisms of the ways that some celebrations maybe have become consumerized and perhaps a little too big, maybe putting too much pressure on us at times, it is true, I would say, that I think the drive to celebrate seems deeply rooted within all of us. Rituals give order and meaning to our existence. Even though different cultures and different religions do celebrations and rituals differently, and on somewhat different occasions, there are also these really interesting similarities and connections between them. Those of you who were at the second hour last week will remember that David Vasquez-Levy shared with us how almost all traditions, it seems, celebrate these 4 times of life: birth, coming of age, marriage or partnership, and death. And as Sagan says, regardless of our beliefs or lack thereof, we all need holidays, celebrations, and traditions. We all need to mark time. We all need community. We all need to bid hello and say goodbye to our loved ones. In her words, I do not believe that my lack of faith makes me immune to the desire to be a part of the rhythm of life on this planet. And perhaps someone who is not so immediately immersed in a world of religion and ritual is perhaps best situated to appreciate and notice the good in it. But I do want to say also that traditions and rituals and rites of passage can be a mixed bag. Looking back ourselves, we might have memories of being forced into a box or a role that didn't feel quite right or we weren't quite ready for. Maybe in the past, for a ritual or a celebration, we may have been forced to wear clothing that didn't affirm our gender identity, or maybe we had to say something we didn't know whether or not we believed. Maybe we didn't want to go through with it, but we felt like we didn't have a choice. Or perhaps you have felt excluded from a ritual because you didn't get to participate in something that it seemed like everyone around you did. When we were talking about this Lent series as a staff team, we observe that there are certain things, and therefore certain people, that get lots of rituals and celebrations. These can include people who have had a lot of school graduations, maybe gotten a lot of degrees and certificates, people who have had many professional achievements, people who have gotten married, people who have become parents. Linnell also reminded us that retirement can be an important ritual for many older adults, but there are many seniors today who simply cannot afford to retire and therefore never get to celebrate that ritual and move on to that stage of post-work life. The reason that I chose today's scripture passage is that I appreciate that it is not a celebration of an achievement, but in fact, it's a celebration of someone who many might see as not deserving at all. You are probably familiar with the story of the prodigal son. But maybe, like me, you never really thought much about the celebration thrown by the father for the younger son who returned home as a ritual. I used to think about the celebration as something that is done for the younger son. But recently, I began to wonder if the party was more for the father and maybe for the older son also. Maybe even it was for the entire community. Maybe they all needed that party to mark the transition that was happening. The younger son, in fact, not being dead, but found alive, and now needing to be reintegrated into the family and the community. The younger son who returned home was already experiencing a marked change in his life, but not everyone else. Maybe the father needed to mark and make real the change that was happening for him and to announce it to the whole community. Maybe the father needed to gather people around him to help him process the shock he was going through and reinforce that this almost unbelievable good news was true. Or maybe the father wasn't really thinking at all. Maybe he was just moved to joy and needed to give that joy an outward expression. Maybe he was reminded of other joyful moments and just felt compelled to do those celebratory things that we do at those times in life. The older son's protest at the elaborate party for his wayward younger brother reminds us that rituals are not always particularly logical or fair. Why we celebrate some moments and not others, who gets celebrated, what we do to celebrate, a lot of it isn't really rooted in fairness. And that's not to say we shouldn't ask questions about why and make changes so that people aren't left out. But I think it is important to remember that rituals are not primarily just logical rewards for hard work. They may not even be primarily intellectual. Often they are just what feels right. I know I've had that experience. Sometimes just a surprise bit of good news or something good happening and just needing to tell someone, or maybe tell everyone. Maybe to go out and buy a cake. Yes, in part for the cake, but also to get to tell the clerk my good news, to share this news with others as I brought that cake back to my office or to some gathering, to make this good news public, to have everyone pause with me to magnify this experience and magnify my good cheer, and to literally be able to taste the sweetness and make tangible this good thing. While some rituals are celebrations of achievement, I appreciate that many rituals are not. We all get to have a birthday each year, whether we've had a lot of success or failed majorly. Whether we are rich or poor, young or old, it's something that we all hold in common as long as we're part of a tradition that marks time in years. Other occasions like Christmas come to us, whether we're ready and prepared or not. The weekend arrives at the end of each week, whether or not we've completed all the work we plan to do. Of course, whether or not we choose to or are allowed to take a break, well, that is another story. Some rituals, like, say, weddings, can connect us to others who have gone through that ritual long before us, and to others who are also planning and preparing for theirs at the same time, and also connects us to those who will go through the ritual in the future. Rituals can connect us to our past and to our future selves, such as when we remember Christmases or birthdays in years past. And this reflection can open us to consider where it is that our lives may be by the time the ritual rolls around again. One of the many powerful visual images, but one in particular that I've seen recently, was of a young Ukrainian Catholic priest in his full ministerial robe saying Mass for other refugees in a bomb shelter in Ukraine. It, for me, was such a striking image to see his communion table set up with an ornate gold cross and beautiful, colorful icons, and his intricately embroidered robe set up against the starkness of those cold concrete walls and very low ceiling. Participating in a familiar ritual in an unfamiliar and downright horrific setting can provide a sense of continuity between the past and the present and give us hope for the future. It can be a sign that God is with us even now. And as we ourselves participate in rituals of solidarity with and for people in Ukraine, we can feel connected to them. Even though for us our day-to-day lives might look more or less the same as before, these rituals of solidarity and prayer can give expression to the ways that we have been internally changed over these past days and weeks. These rituals can allow us to feel like we are at least offering something, at least spiritually, to those who are suffering most right now. This afternoon at 4, we will have a prayer and sound healing ritual, particularly for peace in Ukraine. And I invite you to come and participate and also consider what other rituals of solidarity you might be able to offer. Donating what you would otherwise spend on coffee, lighting a candle each evening before bed, reaching out to a friend in the region, all of those can be ritual actions if they're done with intention. And going back to the book, Sagan describes that the community element of ritual is the part that she felt was most lacking in her more secularized culture, in addition to the aspect of wonder and awe and amazement. She shares that there are no hymns that have been written about scientific theories or mapping genomes. So, in noticing this lack, Sagan has created many of her own rituals that she celebrates with her friends and family. She has this elaborate ritual she does each spring when she sees the first blossom on a tree to celebrate the first blossom of spring. She also has a monthly ritual where she hosts dinner parties for women that she knows, but who do not necessarily know each other. And these dinner parties get them all away from their busy lives and allow them to make new and deep friendships. And we'll have a workshop next Sunday online at 1 p.m. where you can learn more about designing your own potentially ritual practices that might serve you in your life. As we enter this Sunday into the season of Lent, you may be wondering how these perspectives on ritual relate. For me, these ideas about ritual remind me that setting aside some time as separate from regular or ordinary time matters. That even though I might not always immediately feel like going to the trouble or making the effort, I'm usually grateful for doing so in the end, and it makes the season feel the more real and the more vibrant the deeper I go into it. Even though sometimes I'm tempted to take on very little for Lent or just give it all up entirely when it seems that I've already forgotten even on day 2, I really find that the more that I lean into the simplicity and the quiet of the season, even the remembrance of my own mortality, the more awe and wonder I find, the more mystery and amazement to be alive on Easter morning. The more I connect to the suffering of the world right now in Ukraine and elsewhere, the less alone I feel, and the more I can experience the goodness and the beauty of humanity when it emerges. Sagan's book also shows us that we need not to simply regurgitate the rituals we have inherited, but we can create and modify and make them our own. I hesitate a little in saying that because sometimes it can be a little too easy or maybe a little trendy to throw things away from the past because they may seem old or tired or done before. But I do think that when we reflect on the heart of what a ritual is for, we can decide what will best serve that intention and serve us going forward, whether that is something old or something new, some parts borrowed and remixed of the two. The origin of the term Lent, going back etymologically, is simply spring season. And that might seem in some ways to be quite a surface level understanding, But I think Sagan would encourage us to see that as a message that the season of Lent has a deep connection to something that goes back and perhaps beyond Christianity itself and connects us to the spring rituals of many faiths and cultures. It's a season of waiting and preparing for new life, a season of watching and listening, creating space in ourselves, a season of pilgrimage and journeying inward, connecting to the heart of what matters most, for our time on earth is uncertain and finite. This year in particular, we may feel resonance with the idea of yearning for peace in a world that is so sorely lacking, or we may feel moved to simplify our lives as a symbol of solidarity with the great suffering of so many right now. This Lent, I invite you to go into the deep heart of this season and then create or embark on a ritual practice of some shape or form. And whatever it is to do, just try your best to commit to it without too much judgment or analysis or expectations of any results. Let yourself be taken on a journey and shaped by the practice itself. See how it might feel different on different days, how it might interrupt some of your usual thought patterns and ways of being. See how it might connect you to those who have journeyed with this season before, and others who may be doing it now, even perhaps in a very different way. Let this practice you choose bring you into the season and make it a time that is set apart from the ordinary. And really, no, there is no need for perfection. Remember, friends, the prodigal son gets the feast without earning it. We are welcomed home just as we are, even when we may fail at our rituals or stumble in ways much more significant than that. We don't need to earn God's celebration of us. In fact, we can't, even if we try. Rituals come to us and can bring us into a new state of being and relating, but God is with us even without rituals. They can help us, but God loves us and is with us regardless of what we do or what we don't do. We are never alone, and rituals can remind us of that. But even if we don't feel that sense of connection, it isn't any less true. We are beloved. Our rituals can embody that, but they don't make our value or our worth any more or any less real. We are holy just as we are, and for that and so much else, thanks be to God. Amen.